Zork 1. I think this is actually the oldest game in my collection. It was released in 1980. And it's the first of the Zork series. It is also, I believe, the first Infocom game released. And it literally birthed the genre. Now, this was a game that was destined to have 3 parts, just due to how it ends. But I'll get more on that later. This was released in 2 different versions. They had hints versions for certain games. I believe on the outside the box was a different color, I believe gold. Whereas compared to all other games, they had a gray paneling on them. And when you loaded it up, it had a blue background instead of a black background. So this was a game that had a built-in hint system, which could show that they did not. They made enough money on hint booklets for later work. Who knows? But it was basically the text adventure, the quintessential text adventure. Also, this was in the early days of copy protection. So, in order to complete it, you needed the information that came with the game. This is sort of a practice I think has gone by the wayside, mainly because how easy it is to copy material digitally. But as it was a text adventure, you had to rely on what was being told to you to get an idea of what you're looking at. Which is probably why it was such a hit. Now, in this day, when you have everything in front of you in a game, because the technology is there, it's hard to see why this was so popular. But this came out at the beginning of computers becoming a force in the world. Graphics were not as good as they were. Graphics were pretty much in 1980 pretty non-existent. You had text-based graphics. And you literally had to use your imagination. So you are told you're standing in front of a White House. Well, is it a simple White House? Is it a multi-story White House? Your mind puts together the picture. You can get some general ideas of what you think a creature looks like. There's a troll on the bridge. There's a cyclops in the cave. Ooh. You can picture ideas. You had to use your imagination. And as this was a text adventure, you also had to make a map. And there was most people, you would think if you're making a map, okay, well, I'll draw a box. This will denote where I am. I go this way. Oh, I'm here. Okay, and then I go, wait, Okay, so I went north. I'm in front of the house. I go north. I am now on the north side of the house. Okay, I will now go south. You walk into the house. Ow. Or you can't go that way. Hmm? But I went north. So I should go south back. This is where they got people. So you literally had to imagine how your map was going to look. And you didn't just go in your cardinal directions of north, south, east, west, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. You also had to include up and down. So you had to really be on your toes and probably had to revise your map many times. You had to keep notes of where things were, and things could move about too. And you had puzzles in the game. You had puzzles you had to think your way through. This has become a standpoint for for a text adventure. You have to use your head. And you have to think what you're going to need and what you won't need. And this is part of the charm of the game. Every moment you're thinking. Now, this game was very possible to beat in time. It did have a save feature. It also came usually on a floppy disk. Remember, this is the time before we had hard drives to store information on. Every game was designed that once you were done or you hit the final end of the game was over. But we were limited by the technology. It's very possible now that if you were to install your computer on a computer today with Zork, Zork 2, and Zork 3, just for saying, it would pretty much take up very little space indeed. So little space that even if you had to, you ran out of room for one game, you had to clear up room. Removing the games would do nothing to, clear up enough space. But I'm digressing here. I mean, we were limited by using like 5.5 floppies for games. That is like the earliest, close to earliest, commercially made data storage. Hence, graphics were not a major issue at the time. Of course, it's because of this limitation that the imagination got to work and led to creative solutions. For if you venture into dark areas, you can't see anything. Your best option is to double back. Because Zork came up with the GRU. The GRU was designed to be a deterrent for wandering around in the dark. Well, it is pitch black here. Go back to get some light. Or turn on a light. You don't want to be eaten by a GRU. To this day, people are still wary of the GRU. Classic gamers will know of the Gru. So, you turn around, you walk in to the door. You enter the dark area. Grus lurked in the pitch black. You never saw them. They are allergic to the light. So you never, ever, ever saw these bastards. You are left to your imagination. And I'm sure you can picture a lot of crazy stuff. I would not be surprised if some Zork players took their later interpretation of a Gru and put it in, or these people that design monsters. But that's the power of imagination, and that's what these games relied on. These games relied on you thinking. This game relied on your imagination. And you had to think your way through things if you didn't have a hint guide. It also had a roving villain, the thief, who at some point you need him to help you. And then you need to finally defeat him. And the encounters with him were so random, and you had to wonder how he got into some of the areas. Possibly magic. In fact, the one time when I did the playthrough for my challenge, he ended up in an area that you can only get into by shedding most of your inventory. And then he took the only valuable I had on me, which was my source of light. I was screwed. I'll be honest. That's how tricky this game can be, because you could encounter him almost anywhere. Of course, if you didn't have anything of value on you, well, he might just leave you alone. But I could guarantee he's going to take something of value every time you encounter him. This is also why you have to be careful when you roam about. I mean, you may have put something in one spot, but if he picked it up and moved it, it's in another spot altogether now. And that was a bit ahead of its time. And there were sometimes multiple solutions. In fact, when you encounter the Cyclops, I believe you can kill it, but you can also make it run away. All you have to do is say the name of the Cyclops' sworn enemy, the one that invokes fear in Cyclops. Of course, you also have to know some culture. Unless you have a hint guide. And things get really different in this game. I mean, one area you have to go to a dam, and another area you're entering the underworld. So you're having a fun time putting this whole world together. And that was the joy of Infocom games, some of the biggest joy. You're putting the world together in your head. You're imagining what it looks like. And yes, good portion of the game takes place underground, it seems. And the game ends with you descending to the next part. Having gotten all the treasures, a path opens to you to the next part of the challenge. And we will talk about Zork 2 at a later point. As always, this is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X Elsewhere, inviting you to play this beautiful classic. It's simple. It's complex. Your imagination will run wild. So please get this game. It's a great game. And play it. And I thank you for listening to me as I talk about Zork 1. Take care.